BS in Nursing from the UF College of Nursing in 1972, and she's been a community leader and activist who worked to desegregate hospitals in Gainesville, worked with the group Gainesville Women for Equal Rights, and has also been working on a number of community service projects, including the effort to revitalize the Cotton Club as a community center for the Spring Hill neighborhood. Maybe you can tell them a little bit about what that is. She's also, and I can vouch for this from my own personal experience, an outstanding storyteller, poet, and singer. And on behalf of the Health Science Center Libraries, it's a pleasure to welcome you here today.
Thank you. I also lead tall buildings in a single bound. But I'm tickled to be here because I love telling the story. You can tell by my age, by all that stuff, that I must have been in this world a while. 72 years, actually. That's how old I am. And I graduated University of Florida in 1972 because obviously when I finished high school, university was segregated. And there were some other people who came in before I did, but I was already here at Shands working on pediatrics on the 7th floor. So I want to explore a little bit with you this morning some of the things that I think are relevant to the disparities in healthcare. And you can't go forward unless you know the history from whence you have come. And my entire focus in terms of talking with people about African American history is to make sure that there is at least a small sense of commonality in the information that's being dispersed to all of the people. African American history is not just for black folk anymore. And I'm 72, I'm not trying to advance in my job. I'm not trying to raise children. I'm not trying to be a great person in the community. I am just trying to tell it like it is. So if I offend you, it's not my intention. I do tell it like it is. That's why I'm going to leave room for you to ask questions as you have them on your mind. If we never get down to real clear dialogue, we're never going to fix all the things that need to fix, and it's just not with African Americans. You know what I'm talking about. You know, I can't say that because there's a white person here. I can't say that because there's a black person here. Well, what is it you can't say? And why can't you say, and what would make it all right? I always have been this way, though. I didn't just get this way. I kept the job as long as I did. But that's sort of who I am. So I want to explore with you a little bit more the history of healthcare in Gainesville, Florida, a little bit about the University of Florida and blacks that have come through here, a little bit about access to health care, and then leave some time for questions, but I want us to get beyond the statistics in our conversation this morning. So let's start then with a little bit about the history. When I was a little girl, I lived in a row of houses behind, that aren't there anymore, behind a hospital that's not there anymore, Elijah General Hospital. I grew up in that area, so we could see the hospital from my front door. African Americans were given a hallway in the hospital over the boiler room, women in one ward, men in another ward, babies in little cubby holes on the side, and they were over the boiler room with no AC. The rest of the hospital was air conditioned. And I lived in that area. I remember my mother taking me to the hospital when I jumped out of a tree. My mother didn't have any boys, and she had 5 girls, and I was intent on having her have an experience. What it would have been like had she had a boy. So I climbed trees, jumped out of windows, I rode bikes and ran into things. I was always in the emergency room, or she was taking care of me somewhere there. So that was my experience in doing that. I had been in a tree, and I thought I heard my mother coming, so I jumped from a high branch down onto the ground, and there was a huge fish bone that I landed on, so it went all the way through my foot. I still feel the pain. But anyway, then when I had my first son, I was in the hospital. I was in a room with all the other women. The lady behind me had syphilis, a curtain between us. My baby couldn't come in the room. He was in a little room next door. And they took me in the hallway so I could hold him because I couldn't bring him in the room. I shouldn't have been in the room either, but that was the way it was. All the black women were in that room. That was 58. In 62, my second child was born premature. We had worked our way over to the main hospital. But how did we get there? I belonged to the first integrated group of women in Gainesville. We were called the Gainesville Women for Equal Rights. That's how we're listed in history. The city commissioners called us those damn women. Choose your. right here, Johnny. But our intent was to divide up the first group of white women and black women working together with the same goal in mind, but in an organized fashion. We met at homes all over Gainesville, mostly in the Northwest, and strategized how we might integrate Gainesville, Florida, and what things that we could do. We had women in education, we had women in health, we had women, politicians, whatever we needed. We had strategized on a committee that would work that area. Excuse me. I was in healthcare. I chaired the healthcare committee. 4 women, 2 black women, 2 white women, went to Attorney General to ask the administrator if he would comply with the Hill-Burton law, federal law on integration. And of course, by the time he stopped looking as red as his shirt, the dean's shirt here, he finally said he would see what he could do. So next week he took the signs off the bathrooms and the water fountains. So we had to pay him another visit and assure him that we didn't do all of that to get signs moved off of it, because we were already drinking. My friends and I used to go downtown and she'd go to the white fountain, I'd go to the colored fountain, and we'd turn on the water and say, oh, this water isn't colored, it looks just like your water. And then we run out of the store, because obviously we were going to get in trouble. But we were already doing those kind of things because we were rebellious from the beginning. We weren't acquiescent. But here's what happened. Finally, when my second baby was born in '62, we were beginning to put patients in hospitals according to their disease process, his care they need, instead of the color of their skin. The same day, the original day that we walked into the Attorney General to ask them the question, or to present them with the situation, we came on over to Shands, because it was our duty was to do hospitals that week, and then next week we were going to do dental offices and then doctor's offices. We strategically worked it down. Came over to Shands, which had opened with segregated rooms, but integrated floors. So, you know, a black person could have a room next to a white person, but they couldn't be in the same room. You know, the color would kind of dwindle across the room, and, well, whatever. But anyway, so we came over and talked with the administrator, who said to us, of course, we will comply. And that day, they stamped on their admission sheet that they comply with the Hill-Burton law. Now, getting a law on paper doesn't mean that it translates into action on the floor. You understand that? So there were many years before actuality and mindset. That's why I don't know how I kept the job. Because my nose was always in the middle, trying to figure out what the difference was in putting these 2 patients together, except for color, and making people explain to me why that did not happen. All that being said, though, we persevered. We had a chance to move healthcare forward. We went into doctor's offices. My dentist, my children were the first to go to a white dentist office on 4th Avenue. We called because 2 of my white buddy on the committee said, Vivian, we need to take your boys to my dentist. We called to make the appointment. The reception said, oh, I don't know if they see black patients. So she said, well, you go ask him. The dentist said, I see whoever comes to my office. And so my 2 boys were 6 and 10 by then, and we enrolled them to go, no, they were younger than that. We enrolled them to go to this doctor, and they loved it because he had a big drawer of toys. Man, after they got to take care, they got to go through the toys, and my friends then started to pick up. And I thought that was just such a good turnaround, because about maybe about 20 years later, I taught this doctor's daughter who came into nursing in Santa Fe. I said, tell your dad how much I appreciate him and what a difference he made in my son's life. Dentists in Gainesville would see some of them would see black patients 1 day a week, period. They said they needed time to get, you know, the right sterilization and all that. And I'm thinking, oh, I hope that white patients know that they are unsure of their sterilization process, except for, and it takes them so long to do that. But anyway, any excuse was what they were using. So let me tell you, I brought along a lot of information on statistics, on what we need to do and all that. But you can Google as well as I can. You can Google as well as I can. I'm 72. You need what I have learned in these years that we've followed. So through the Gainesville Commission, Gainesville Women for Equal Rights, and other women's groups, we were really at the forefront. We were able to bring about a lot of things. So what then happened with the University of Florida? Well, Miss Mickle, she wasn't Mickle then, Evelyn can't remember his maiden name, was the first African-American woman to graduate, woman or man, through the College of Nursing here at the University of Florida. After she did came Neil Butler, who not only graduated with a bachelor's, got a master's. He went on to work at the VA. He went on to be the mayor of Gainesville. He was written up in textbooks. He has passed away now. But there have been noted people to come through the University of Florida. I started working as a nursing assistant because I always knew I wanted to be on pediatrics. So I was on the pediatric floor. I was there before there was ever a pediatric intensive care unit. Actually, they tore the wall down between 2 4-bed units and made the first PICU. And by the time the step-down unit was in place, I had graduated, and I became the charge nurse in there. I only worked for 2 years after I graduated because Santa Fe sent somebody over. I think it was, I don't know, it was Barbara Cross. Somebody came over, Lucille Little, to ask me to, I'm looking at Dr. Walker here because she and I taught at Santa Fe together. Sent her over to recruit me to come teach pediatrics, and I'm so glad they did. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. But sparse numbers of African-American students, sparse number of doctors taking care of patients, more things going on more things not going on that needed to be going on to make sure that we were receiving equal education. I came into the University of Florida in competition with people who had gone to elite schools where they had everything they needed. The school I graduated from, the year that my teacher wanted to teach us courses in the higher level sciences, he couldn't. Didn't have materials, he was the only one teaching all the science. So I came in here without chemistry, without all those things, and older. So I had to make my way through. It wasn't easy, folks, but I did go to Santa Fe the first year, second 2 years here, and then Dean Dr. Smith. You may have heard her name. She was very instrumental in helping me do a lot of things. But I'm talking today about the things you need to know. So why am I doing so much with this? If you don't know from whence I've come, you can't give me adequate care. How can you take care of my mental status if I sit down and talk with you and you start thinking of me as beginning where you began and my roots go in a different direction? Now that's just not with black folks. That's with all cultures. We need to have to buy in. When I worked for Florida Nurses Association, had a cultural coalition all over the state, and I was a member of that board. And we talked about cultural brokers. You need somebody in that room of that culture brokering, or on that team, or somewhere, brokering for that culture. Because how do you know if you're given the care that that culture needs? So, for an instance, one day I'm on the floor, and this lady had a prayer cloth blessed. Tiny little red square. She wanted it on this baby's pillow all the time. Well, other ships are making fun of that. I get goosebumps thinking about it. Wanted to throw it away. I was so upset. I said, and how do you get the right to intervene in this religious process between this mother and their child? But they have to leave. We didn't let them stay. But they left that prayer cloth that had been blessed and placed there. And for them, that meant the difference. I brokered. You see what I'm saying? At another instance, we were told down South Florida, another cultural group needed to send in a jar that had certain elements of the earth and all of that into a room of a patient who was very sick, and the patient was on strict isolation, you know, immune deficient, so couldn't have a lot in. And they worried about, oh, they can't take that in there. But one nurse on the floor put everything in a jar and autoclaved it and sent it in the room. You see what I'm saying? We need to know. So what does religion mean to me in the African American community? If they go in there and there's loud prayers and singing and shouting, leave them alone. That's a cultural thing. And that they're praying for healing. Because all the healing that's done comes from up here. I don't care whose hands is laid there, but the blessing that I feel comes from there. So I'm talking about cultural broking in that manner. The other issue that we face as older folk, older black and white folk, is the fact that you all don't really know how to take care of us. I'm discovering that every day. First of all, you give us prescription with tiny little font on there. I can't read any of the precautions. I don't know what's going to make me sicker because I can't read it. You hear what I'm saying? Okay, so then you sit there and you tell me all these long words and send me off to go, and I think, now what did she say? Some people come and they talk really fast. And I slowed one lady down. I said, sweetheart, you're talking about 90 miles a minute. My ears only go up to about 15. So we got to get in sync here because I don't know what you're saying. But everybody's not brave as I am, so they don't slow them down. So that's where we need the nurses. Now, if you're the doctor, slow down now. Of course, we never can read or write, and thank God for computers. And thank God that we get those things written out now. I think doctors major in how not to write. But anyway, that's another story. I spent years trying to read that. But that's the least of our problems now. More of our problem is whether or not as an aged person, you're going to come in the room and see me as an aged person. I already have more knowledge than you in terms of life. Don't talk to me like I'm 2 years old. I still want respect. If I'm African American, I do not want you to come in the room and call me Vivian, and you are your age like most of you are in here. I'm insulted because it's an age thing, and I demand respect. I would never do that. One doctor, when I brought my mother out to Shan, said to her, my name is Dr. So-and-so, and what do people usually call you? I thought a minute. I said, well, people usually call her Big Mama, but you don't know her that well. He had her name. He had her name. All he needed was Mrs. And he'd had it right. If my mother didn't want to be Mrs., she would have said, call me Lucille. You see what I'm saying? If you don't learn anything else from me, get permission to call people by their first name. Now, I know that you're not trying to be disrespectful. There's a certain number of people in certain states and certain ethnic groups think that familiarity is a sign of respect and a sign of warmth, a sign of love. That's fine. Doesn't work with us. So just find out where it works and use it. I'm working with a company now who I'm paying a large amount of money. And this girl called me up and said, Vivian, Mr. So-and-so said they want to come out tomorrow. I said, excuse me. And Mr. So-and-so is about 29 or 30 years old to begin with. But the fact that she didn't know me, if you're going to use a sentence where you use a handle for somebody, you have to use it for everybody. And you certainly can't call and tell me you're Mrs. So-and-so and call me by my first name. That is definitely a no-no. So if you walk in and you're a doctor, who's-a-McCallin, this is Mrs. Whatchamacallit, until that person gives you a chance. These are the things I taught my students. The other thing that bothers me when I'm teaching cultural differences is if parents have been taught a certain way to raise their children, and it's not detrimental to the child or the parent, what makes us think that we have to go in and change it? Don't you have to listen to it first, though? Don't you have to make sure? I should tell my students when patients come in, they've been changing this dressing. This mother's been changing this dressing in the home for 6 months. You're a new student. You're so proud. You've been taught to do this way. Mother comes in, oh, no, you can't do it that way. You have to do it this way. Mother is not listening to you. If you look at what she's doing, and it breaks no sterile technique, it doesn't go against the grain in any way, what she's doing is all right. You see? So knowledge is the essence of where we're going. Knowledge you have to have if you're going to give the best care possible. But we have to talk also about gender. You know, what kind of respect are we giving people? When I grew up, I loved to have been fathered by my dad, who had 5 daughters. And he was such a great dad, we all thought we were his favorite daughter. Except I really was. My sisters hate that, but I know I really was. I looked like him. But, you know, that kind of fathering is rare, and all fathers don't father that way. My mother was a disciplinarian. Now, my mother could cut a nail with her eyes. If you didn't do it right, my mother was going to straighten it out. I don't know why people think I'm like her. But anyway, you could talk my dad out of anything. And so you have to know in the relationship who is a stronger, well, it's not even strong. I think it's equal. I just think it's division of labor among them, and that's what they do. And it was all right for me to be in that situation. When I got married, my husband and I can't be rude. I can't do that. I can't do that piece. But I love to be next to. And in some situations, I love to just close my mouth. If I have to take my car in, I'm not wanting to talk. I don't know what I'm talking about. I want my husband to talk. If I get us in a real bad mess, I don't want to talk. I want my husband to talk. And I said, I don't know, you have to ask my husband. Because I knew that he was a Capricorn. He could work it out. I'm a Gemini. I'm 2 people. I used to tell my husband he was a blessed man. He never knew which wife he was coming home to. Because that's the way I operate. But I did respect him, though, because he was a strong man. He raised strong sons. And he was able to make major decisions. But he was very willing to help me. When I was ready to go to school, he was already out working. He was teaching by then. He woke our 2 children up, got them dressed, bathed, fed, one off to daycare, one off to his mother, so that I wouldn't have anything to do when I came home from working all night as a nursing assistant here. Yes. And then he boosted me all the way through. So you have to know where the supports are. But in terms of the doctor-nurse patient relationship, you have to know all of this for it to work. You even have to know that in Gainesville, Florida, in Alachua County, there are people can still remember where the lynching trees are. I had this conversation the other day. This guy said, oh yeah, on the other side of 235, on that corner, it's still there. He remembers seeing that. So you have to know that when we talk about race and ethnicity and what happened to African Americans, we don't want you to get glassy-eyed and kind of check out. And don't try to think of something else, and don't try to think of how to make it better. You can't. You weren't there. History happened. As clean and pure as it was, it happened. I'm not asking you to make it better. I'm asking you to know it. I talked to another group on campus for another class, and the young lady stood up and said, well, what do you want us to do as the new people on the block? I said, I certainly want you to know what we did. Does that make sense? So you don't do it over. I want you to go where I was and go forward. I do not want you going backwards, but if you don't know what I did, you'll let things go back to where they were. Then you're just treading water, because you're doing things over and over again. Why do I say that? Because can you look around you and think percentage-wise, we have enough African-American students in this room? We have enough African-American students in medical school and nursing school and PT, all OT. Do we have them there yet? No. That's where I want you to be working. I want you to make sure that the education is done, that the door is open, that they are prepared. And it does not matter, poor children and rich children can learn equally as well if they're given the same resources. Amen. And I don't mean just a book. I mean if they can't go to Canada, then they need an audiovisual way that make them think that they were in Canada. Because don't you learn more in Canada than you sitting down looking in a book? So I'm saying if they're equally prepared. So did they get breakfast that morning? Did somebody hold them and hug them and tell them they loved them? Education is more than just that. So when you see me as your patient, I don't want you to see me as my 15 minutes, which I don't get all of too, by the way. But I can't pay for 15. But I don't want you to say, oh yeah, you're doing all right, you're doing all right, yeah, you can go out the door. I tell people who I talk to, don't let them do that. Put your foot down firm on the ground, have your list, and pull it out. And you say, Dr. So-and-so, before we go, I need to know this, and don't let them put you off. You paying for 15 minutes. And if it's Medicare paying, you're paying still. If it's Medicaid paying, you're paying still. And if nobody's paying, and they've allowed you in their office, you should get the best health care that you need. You have not because you ask not. But are people sort of reluctant? I am too. I found myself walking out of the doctor's office and saying, oh, I meant to. You've done it. Because I'm thinking, oh, I walked in and God's here. God's going to tell me how my life's going to be better. As soon as I leave out of here, I can't do that. He's busy. I can't do it. That's what I used to do. I'm 72 now. I don't do that anymore. I don't do that anymore. And if I forget, I said, I'm going to wait here. I know the doctor has somebody else in there, but I forgot to ask so-and-so. Unless, because the nurse is a resource. As a nurse might be able to ask it. But I'm talking about, I know I'm rambling a lot. That's good, because I'm 72. I don't care what you think about what I'm doing, but the fact is, it ties together. And I have a script. I have a real nice script. I'm hitting on some of it, too. But the other part is that I just want you to buy in, because I want you to ask questions. I want you to buy in with the respect for education, with the respect for African American history, with the respect for culture and the cultural impact on healthcare. There is an impact. When I walk in a whole hospital and only see one person who looks like me, I'm beginning to think, who do I talk to? Who's going to really understand what I say? If I say I got the miseries, are you going to really know? The young people don't even know what the miseries are. You do?
No, I just had to take the HESI and it was a practice question.
All right.
It was a practice question. It was a young black baby, and the grandma was saying, "Oh, my son has the miseries."
Yeah. Okay. See? And so if you've never been exposed, it would be a Hispanic word that I wouldn't know. But if I have a Hispanic patient, I need a resource. That person needs a broker. I need to know if what, in most healthcare, we're all human and we do human care. But in some situations, that care differs. In some instances, you can't give me this because ethnically, I won't accept that. And then so you can't talk to me that way because ethnically I don't accept it. Skin color change in patients. You all talk about that, don't you? How you tell cyanosis and all of that, and dark skin. You talk about that, right? Oh, and jaundice. Oh, yeah. My mother taught me, and she didn't know anything about healthcare. But what she taught me, I still taught. When I was teaching, book salesmen used to come to me, Santa Fe, to sell the books because I taught pediatrics, and they put us African Americans, as a paragraph at the end of the chapter. So I had 3 of them in a room one day. Sat them down in the nurse's lounge, and I said, let's talk about this. I want to be on every page. I want to see black children on every page where they belong. Most of this is about human care, and it won't matter if you use what ethnicity. But if you're talking about skin color change because the child is jaundice, or the child is cyanotic, are you talking about some other growth and development things, which black children seem to do at different levels, it needs to go there. Not in a paragraph at the end when we're all done with that. And we talk about hair care. You know, I know the time, but right now I don't do hair care to anybody because we wear all kinds of hair now. But at one time, African Americans washed their hair once every 2 weeks. And white nurses thought that was terrible. Well, heavens to best, we barely make any oil at all in our hair. And I didn't wash mine every 2 weeks. And I made sure I didn't have much to wash when I did. Because I don't like hair. And I suffered with it for years. And finally I woke up one morning and said, idiot, you don't have to do this. So in 1981 or 82, I cropped it all off. My husband was shocked because he liked hair. So I walked in, he's doing the buffer in the big room, and I walked in, he said, look, he looked at Vivian, what in the hell have you done? This is what he had until he passed away a year and a half ago. But what should I do about that? If you don't know, ask, but don't assume. But if we wash our hair every 2 weeks, and we went to the beauty parlor and got it all straightened and curled, fixed up, and you decided, because your health care list said hair care, skin care, I hope it still says that, you wash that person's hair, you are in deep trouble. Severely deep trouble. Because now you put them back to stage 1. I don't do kinky as a term to define people's hair. I have tiny little curls in my hair. Only God has it curly now, it's small enough to make it. So I have curly hair. I have really curly hair. And I have a little section I do for the children on that. I feel good about big lips and big nose and all that. That's what God gave me. So we lived, African Americans, as does everybody else, even brunette white people, lived by the prototype that you had to be blonde, blue-eyed, and a certain weight. And that was the American woman. Didn't that just disqualify most of us? Until we all had to take back the fact that we're all within our right, no matter what we look like, we're within our right to look that way and make ourselves as attractive as we want to be. Because nobody makes you happy, right? I hope that you don't not going there. Don't marry nobody to make you happy. If you can't make you happy, stay single. Because you can't do it in a relationship if you haven't done it for yourself. And that's my modicum of what I wanted to say. I have a lot about statistics. We know hypertension, diabetes, obesity. We know all of these things. Asthma are running rampant now, more so than ever. We've changed our protocol. We sent kids, we integrated in Gainesville. Joe Buchanan and those integrated Gainesville High School. We finally got kids in. My children integrated at lower level. My baby boy, who is my baby, listen to this, who is 48 years old. He used my 4-pound premium. When I introduced him, I still introduce him like that. He said, oh, Mama, can't I just be your son or something? But he started PK in kindergarten, and he's a lifer. He went all the way through 12th grade. But my other son integrated on University Avenue. They all had stories to tell. But you know, it wasn't the children. Children loved children, and all the children got along. But it was the parents feeding the negative things in. Is it all gone? Oh, no. Oh, Jim Crow didn't die. He just slept in some places. Some places he hasn't slept at all. They talk about places in Mississippi that still have the colored and white signs. And then if they talk about places in classrooms where teachers automatically assume this African-American male is out to make trouble, So he's looked at differently if he does something. I know, because we just moved my grandson, who is 7, who thinks everybody should pay attention to him in school. We realize that. So his dad was over there every day. But he would do things, like in kindergarten, he wrote on the wall and sat back in the seat, and the teacher came back in the room, and everybody said, somebody wrote on the wall. Somebody wrote a Y on the wall. I don't know who wrote on the wall. Somebody wrote on the Y, a Y on the wall. It's not a Y, it's a W, he said. But his teacher, they labeled him because he did things like that. And finally, they were giving him poor grades, but for us, he read well. This year, my son moved it to another teacher, and he sat down and told the teacher, I'm not looking for special treatment. I want you to reprimand him where he needs it. But I want you to help me, help him grow. And he's at the top of his class in reading right now. And he just moved in this year. So often, I have 3 friends who their teacher wanted to take their black kids out of school and send them to Aquin Jones, a special school for children with learning disabilities. I said to them, don't let him. Tell them if you have to marry a bench in that school, you're going to be there every day, and you're going to see what. Well, one kid was having trouble reading. They put him over in a reading class, brought his reading skills up, and he excelled. The other kid, somebody was bullying him. They found out about it. They brought his skills up. He's graduating in top of his class. You see, are we paying enough attention? Well, did those kids have mothers that could just sit down and figure that out, and fathers? No, they needed outside sources. So sometimes the outside source will be us, healthcare providers. We have to look at the whole picture. So we want to know how they're doing in school. We want to know what we can do to help. We want to know if they ate a balanced diet. I talked to a lady the other day. We have a Health Smart program at church. You wouldn't know about looking at me, but this is over Christmas. It's going to come off by June. But anyway, she was saying, I've got this fat on my stomach and I want to get it off. The other one said, well, you know, you can take this laxative and you can do that. And they went on about the laxative. I said, sweetheart, that fat is outside between your stomach and your muscle. You ain't going to blow that out in the bathroom. You're going to have to exercise that off. But you people have strange ideas about what they're going to do. So, you know, it's like take the casserole and get into labor. No, those are 2 different systems. I mean, you may do something, but it won't be out of a baby. So, you know, you have to look at these kind of things. And so are you willing to listen and realize you're going to hear these things? So you're going to have to keep a straight face enough to tell them. I don't have to keep a straight face because I'm there with them. They know I'm going to laugh and then tell them what it's all about. But I've always been that way. But all I'm asking you to do is walk a mile in their shoes. Don't shy away from learning Black history. I'm on a committee who brought in the superintendent of schools in a meeting. Because what we asked him was, why can't Alachi County teach Black history? Now, when you have me in here, you're not teaching Black history. You're celebrating Black history. But you know what teaching is? It's a curriculum. It's a way to evaluate what's been taught. There's a continuation from grade to grade. There is accountability. That's what teaching Black history is. There is a curriculum already ready to go. Alachi County won't have it. And so we held them to task for that. But the disparities that are occurring, you think they're occurring because these kids just don't want to do? Or are they occurring because they just don't feel whole? They don't feel like complete citizens. When I was going to school and they did Tom and Jerry, who were the 2 kids who went up the hill? Jack and Jill. All the books we got had Jack and Jill, blonde, blue-eyed, that went up the hill to get a pail of water. None of the books had us in them. So what were we to think? Black teachers kept us whole. They kept us knowing that we were somebody. Now, if the book doesn't have some black somewhere in it, I don't buy it for my grandchildren. I don't think you ought to buy it for white children either. Because it's not true. I think Hispanic children should be, Latino children, Asian children. I think we need to do, if a company advertises and they want me to buy from them, and the whole advertisement just has white folks, I don't go there. I know they had some black person somewhere that they could have shot a picture of and say, yeah, you're welcome. You got the people in the book have to look just like me sometime. Now, if they have a series, and I'm in one series, not another, I can live with that. But you can't tell me of all of these faces that are available that you couldn't put, you know, it's the exclusion. So if you could exclude them from life, they exclude themselves from life, and they end up at the prison where I was on Saturday. 5,000 strong. That's where I was doing this, doing Black history. We spend more money keeping them in prison than we set aside to put them in schools. Then we want to pay the teachers. We don't honor the teachers, we don't pay the teachers, we don't reward the teachers. And the teachers are why we're all here. So we need to be able to do that. So why wasn't this kid given all they needed? Child didn't know, parents didn't know. Somebody knew. So one of my friends, a group we ran around with, we were sitting having lunch one day at Santa Fe, and they were talking, one said, well, I never saw black folk in my schools. I didn't see them in my community, I didn't see them in my store. And when I went out to school, I didn't see. I finally said to her, well, sweetheart, didn't you wonder where we were? We had to be somewhere so your family could afford to keep you separate. But we had to be somewhere. We couldn't afford to be separate. I mean, we had to be where we could be. So the reason I said that was it was her obligation to find out where we were. If you're a United States citizen and you take on a job that involves other United States citizens, you didn't know where we are. If I take it on, I need to know where Asian and Latino and Hispanic people are. I need to know that. I may not know it as well as they do, but I certainly need to give account of the fact that I don't know so I can go find out. So when we start talking black history, see this room, it should be packed. But the rest of them out there, they don't know. But they think they know. They said I'll treat you just like I treat myself. Well, I don't want to be treated like that in most cases because I don't comb my hair the same way. I don't think the same way. And you only treat me the way I want to be treated, or I need to be treated, or my culture dictates that I'm treated in order to give personalized health care. We used to say common sense. Didn't we say common sense? Some people are old enough to know common sense. But common sense means that everybody was taught to say please and thank you, and may I, and to hold the door for the person behind you, and to be respectful. They don't teach that anymore hardly. I mean, I go into school and kids about to knock me on the floor. Of course, I call them back. Oh, yeah. A guy walked out. I'm going to let you ask questions after this. A guy walked out of a Winn-Dixie one day. Big, tall African-American dude. Must have been 6'1" or 6'2", tall dude. And didn't hold the door for me. Walked on out to his car. I said, excuse me, son. He said, yeah, ma'am. I said, come back here. He came back up. I said, nah. You see this gray hair? I've been in this world a long time, and when I was growing up, we were taught to hold the door. I don't care who you are. I hold it for male, female, whoever, because I don't want the door to hit them. I said, we were taught to hold the door until the next person either caught the door or went through here. Oh, I'm so sorry. He apologized. He was so sorry. He held the door. He did all of that. And I bet today he's somewhere holding the door for a gray-haired lady because he wasn't taught. So common sense is only common sense when it's taught. If you learn something about a culture you don't know about, nurses teach nurses, doctors teach doctors through the stories you tell. Yeah. Oh, when I had a patient that did this, and this happened, this is what happened. But when I did this, this happened. And there's a story that's going to need this person not to do that. Either it didn't work or to do it because it did work. And those of us who know are charged with teaching others. But until we're all on the same page, and right now in America, even in Gainesville, we're not all on the same page. I'm here doing Black History. There are probably about 40 of us all over Gainesville doing Black History. But we can't do it all. We don't even know it all. It's not our job to do it all. One lady called, she wants 4 of us in her school at the same time. And I wrote back and said, I won't be one of the 4. I want her to get her 4 people and bring it to one of us, learn what we know, so next year she can teach 4 more. Why? You know, where does the responsibility end? When I worked at Santa Fe, the Equal Opportunity Act required that on every committee there's an African American. They didn't hire many of us. So I'm running all over campus on committees. While my white counterparts could decide if they wanted to be on the committee. But my position on the committee was decided because I'm African American. Go figure. Do you think about that? We get the same salary, but I'm working a little bit harder here because I'm on 5 more committees than you had to be on. I tell my people when we look at who's middle class, don't put me there in the same category with you, even if I bring the same salary. Chances are you're sitting on some old money from some old names that's created some old land. I don't have that. My generation of African Americans are taking care of the current family, the family behind them, the one in front of them, and my husband and I helped many cousins go to college. So what we made went out. We hope that they will have a store that will eventually become that, but we don't have, but it's all right because we're farther along than we were. Now, we stay here till 1:30? A 1?
1.
Okay, then I'm going to
But
stop.
we saved the room till 1:30.
We do have the room, so anybody can stay can, but let me stop now for those of you who wish to ask the question. I know it's rambling, but I've had a ball. I don't know about you.
Yes.
Questions? Was I that good? Okay.
I'd like to share a story,
Sure.
because when you were talking, my college roommate became a nurse midwife, and she worked in rural South Carolina. And I remember her telling me that she learned that in that culture, if a baby had hiccups, they took a piece of a brown paper grocery bag and moistened
Fold
it
it up.
and put it on the baby, on the forehead or somewhere on the face.
Yeah, you used to put it in here. Oh, that's for nosebleed.
And she was saying she realized that that was something that was important to them. And so she would suggest to them, well, while you're waiting for that to work, why don't you nurse the baby?
Yeah.
You know, and so
Yeah,
without
yeah.
disrespecting what they were doing and
cultural
what they
norm.
felt was their tradition, still trying to suggest to them something that might also be appropriate.
There is where you will use your education. Because you find out how to incorporate their standards with what you want them to know. That's how you teach anyway. If you don't start where the person is and try to get them where you want them to be, you don't teach. Because they just throw another one. First time I was asked to teach about diet over at Lunch Journal, I had a group of students over there. They wanted this lady to go home because she had hypertension on this very special diet. And they had asparagus and cauliflower and broccoli and we weren't even looking at that stuff in those days. I said, you better give me that list. I need to put some cabbage and collard greens and string beans and that stuff she's going to go in her backyard and crop and cook. Just tell her how to cook it. So you don't have to have the hog knuckles and the pigtails and all of that. You don't have to have all that. You can use oil and seasonings and still make a nice dish. Yes. And I'm sorry, I'll come back to you.
I can appreciate a lot of what you were saying because my mother worked at the courthouse in Levy County.
Yes.
And my uncle was the only black FBI agent in Levy County. So I was on field trips in elementary school going to Tallahassee with my mother. And I used to say, Mom, where are the rest of the black people? Why are we the only 2 black people? And my mom used to help people get their homes fixed, pay their bills. And they were mostly poor white people in Levy County. And we used to go over to, I forget the name of the city that burned down in
Rosewood.
Yeah, we used to go over to Rosewood, and I had no idea. See, I used to talk a lot when I was a little kid, and my mom used to say, "Be quiet, we're going into Rosewood," and I never knew what Rosewood was.
Yeah. One of my goddaughters is a descendant. I spoke to their reunion last year. They've done great things with that, though. Some of those, Rosewood was a city that burned for 3 days. And all the black people had to leave everything they had. They established a scholarship. My goddaughter was the first to graduate on the scholarship. She's now working out in Carolina. But you're all right. And you know what? Your story is not unique. All of us, if we don't have it in your generation, it's a generation behind you. But most of us can talk to our elders, and you need to ask the elders the question. White, black folks. And then when you find those answers, come share it with our white brothers and friends and our Hispanic and if we don't tell it, don't feel like you're less than or that you need to tell the story. You know, we're just human. And I have some things that I need to know from you too. I'm sorry, but she had her hand up. I'll get you.
Yes. What changes have you seen in healthcare from back in when you used to be more active and now?
Well, more respect. More respect and more access. Even though access is not now what it should be for everybody, it's better than it was. We didn't always expect to get an illness and go to the doctor. Because somebody in our family knew what root to dig up and to boil. And so we had sassafras roots and we had mint tea. And my niece was Down syndrome. I went to her house the other day and she said something was wrong. She was going to put some vinegar and some honey and some baking soda together, and that was going to make her better. And I thought, Effie, who's this y'all been talking to? But you know, there were concoctions that they put together. Some of them I still remember too, and we didn't go. It's like when they had a cut, and they pulled, we don't even see these anymore, the spider webs from the wall, and put it over the cut and stop the bleeding. Well, the spider webs are made of fibrin. Did they know that? No. They just knew it worked. Doesn't fibrin cause clotting? So you see, we weren't, there are a lot of those things. You listen to them first. Now, I wouldn't tell them to put the put it in there, but I would say, now if you do that, be sure you wash it good with some soap and put some polyfluorine on it too, because of the other things that might happen. Yes, good.
Following up on the lady's story that she was talking about, with the baby.
Yeah.
And see, when I hear that story, I grew up in Florida. What I thought she was going to say was to take 2 pieces of straw out of a broom.
Yeah, cross it, put it over the temple.
So there are all these things that, you know,
that we know.
I walk in and I see it, I'm going, oh, okay, I know what that's
Yeah.
Someone else would walk in and be like, well, why is this?
That's right. That's right. And you can always ask. You can say, I know this is important, and I really want to know more about it. They'll tell you. You just can't make them feel bad because it's there. And it's not hurting anything. Leave it there and then plan your care around that. When you said the paper bag, I thought you were going to say fold it up and put it under your top lip for a nosebleed.
Oh.
And that was supposed to help to stop the nosebleed. But we got many of them out there. Many of them. Another question? Question? Okay, one of the things that makes me proud of the people, I've taught many students, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Nothing makes me feel better than walk into a hospital and everybody say, oh, there's Vivian. Or I'm a patient. They said, oh, Vivian's my patient. You know, I feel so rewarded. And I didn't do it. I know I wasn't their only teacher, but I was one of their teachers. And I always tried to tell them what I thought was the truth, and for all my patients. If there's an African-American woman in there, did you talk about these things? Did you even talk about sexuality? Do older African-American women talk about sexuality? No, not really. But I work 3 days a week with a group at Oak Park that are elderly and disabled. Some of them are as young as, I guess, 50-ish. But they, a lot of times, pick the topic. Now, see, I don't think 50 is old. I just think 50 is very young. But anyway, one of the topics they picked one day was sex after 50. And the old guys in there went, But when I researched and brought my information back, we had the class, it was a lively class. A lot of discussion about one guy said, well, people around here think I've been messing with so-and-so, but I ain't been messing with so-and-so because I had diabetes and I can't even, you know, you heard more than you want. But they were talking. And part of what I do there is a high-rise, and everybody has their own apartment. Part of, a big portion of what I try to do is bring community. So they don't feel isolated. They live alone. They need to know in that complex there's somebody else that they know something about. So sometimes I entertain them. I bring in dancers and singing. They get a lunch every day. I help them learn. I talk about what's in it, how to look for the right ingredients. I do a lot. I've loved it. It ends the end of this month. And then I have a date at a spa for me. For days and days and days. Because I'll be so tired. But I still talk about ethnicity. We're more alike than we're unalike, but the unalike may make the difference in the level of care that's offered and accepted. So if you naturally assume that if you come in here and give me what's good for you, it's going to work for me, you have probably naturally lost me. But if you say, this is what I've used before, does this seem like something that worked for you? And if it's something that won't work for you, what can I change in here that would make that better for you? You're going to end up with all sizes, one size fits all. One size may fit almost all, but it certainly doesn't fit all. And we have to stop getting on our high horses and think that we know more than the folk. I always want to, even though I have a big mouth and I talk a lot, I always want to hear what my patient has to say, because there is where I start. So when this lady told me that she's going to take this castor oil to get rid of her fat, I needed to know that she thought that that was going to happen. So then I drew her a little diagram. I showed her the momentum, and then I showed her where those fat cells get between that and the skin, and where the difference was between that. Oh, is that right? Well, let's talk about what we can do. So, and we meet once a week, so then I wrote down some things that she's going to try, and I'm trying it with her, because we've now started the treadmill. But anyway, that's how you can put those things into action.
Well, Vivian,
Yes.
sometimes I'm asked what my most rewarding day was in nursing.
Mm-hmm.
And I always reflect back on that time that you and Verdell sang to that patient who was dying, and you sang Amazing Grace.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that is...
I forgot about that. African-American patient was dying and wanted to have Amazing Grace. And Verdell, 2 black faculty, we were both there. And Verdell is singer. My sisters and I sing, and we did Amazing Grace. Thank you for reminding me. Touchy thing, but I have moments when I bled out really badly from a tooth and had the wrong medicine anyway. I had a bad ulcer. Crit was down to 17. I remember being in the hospital, and my doctor came in. I won't give his name because he's still my doctor, because we had a good tete-a-tete over this. He said, when he came to see me after I'm doing transfusion, and you know it's 17 crit, I felt lousy. He said, does the tooth still hurt, the spot? I said, yes. He said, well, I'm going to give you some Demerol. I said, I can't take Demerol. He said, well, I'll put Finnegan with it. And I was too tired to really argue with him, so he had her give me Demerol. Finnegan, I was sick as a dog all night long. But a nurse came, I sat on the edge of the bed, and she sat next to me and cradled my head on her side. And she stood there and stood there and stood there. And that's what got me through. And that's why I know I am in the right profession. There are many of my babies, when my babies died here at Shands, I never wanted them to put them on that cold street. I walked them down to the morgue. I cried. I cried with families. That's what you do. People say, I can't be a pediatric nurse because I love babies. I hope you don't do it if you don't love them.
Oh, God.
You are bad news. You're bad news. So we do what we have to do in healthcare, but don't go into it if you don't love people, because guess who you're going to be taking care of. Okay, well, I'm going to come back to you again, but there's a piece that I do, most of my stories I do, I'm going to do this and I'll close out with if you don't have any other questions. Most of my stories, is this mine?
What is yours?
Thank you. I do an African-American folk language, and I talk about the folk language being set that way because when slaves first came to America, brought over enslaved, they brought 6 languages with them because they came from 6 countries. They heard the 7th language when they got here, and they had to make words. And they did that by putting sounds together that were alike. In all of those 6 languages that came here, there was the absence of the TH. There were some other absences too, but a couple of my friends did a dissertation on this, but TH was most profound, did not exist. They all substituted a D for the TH. Dat, D's, dim, defo. Go to the islands when they're building the drums and doing that. Don't you hear the D? Wherever we are, wherever we've gone, the D has been prevalent. So when the writer wrote this piece, wrote it in that language. But it's the sincerity of a mother who's willing to do whatever she could to get her child to go to school. Not 4 years, because when they had to do sharecropping and all that, they had to go many years. But they washed with the rub board, and they used a lot of manual labor to do it. My mother did that. And she earned money by washing clothes for University of Florida students. One guy I remember vividly, he only wore white shirts. Oh, I didn't like that man very much. When he came with that bundle, but my mother was earning money. I mean, he was nice enough. It's just that I hated those shirts. But she did all that to earn money. But here's a piece called Bring That College Home. It goes like this. I've been sending you to college now for 6 or 7 years. Since the morning that you left me, I've been shedding bitter tears. But I thought of that old saying, sunshine comes behind the storm. So my young man, when you finish, you just bring that college home. I've been shivering by the wash tub, and I've been sweating in the fields. Many times I had to borrow, and I almost had to steal. But I held on to my patience, beat them soap suds into foam. All the time my heart was saying, he's going to bring that college home. I got food enough for winter, plenty clothes to keep me warm. So you trot on off to college, then next June you bring it home. Don't you mind these folks here talking? They ain't half as good as you. And they's bound to nag at good folks because that's all they knows how to do. So next spring, when the dogwoods blossom and the bees begin to swarm, I'll be waiting for to see you when you bring that college home. I don't mean bring home the buildings or to wreck them good folks' place. Bring home Christian education and that high-toned college grace. You just grab them fessers' habits. Hold them tight through wind and stone. Then when you get your diploma, take them all and bring them home. Show the folks here that you got it by the speeches that you make. by the specs you be wearing and the way your coattails shake. But don't get above the people. Settle down and don't you roam. Be a light in your own village. Be a college here at home. Thank you.
Thank you. One question for you. Tell us a little about your Cotton Club project.
Oh, I didn't talk about the Cotton Club. If you have a second, if you need to go, go. But the Cotton Club is a building built by the soldiers in World War II. And at the end of the war, when the federal government sold the buildings off, you could buy a building for $1. The Perriman brothers bought that building and brought it to Gainesville. Put it on the east side of town. It was a theater. Closed as a theater, became a big bands club named after the Cotton Club in Harlem. It had James Brown, B.B. King, Brooke Benton, Ray Charles, all of them were through there. We're renovating that to turn it into a cultural center. You can Google us in Cotton Club Gainesville and read more about it. Thank you very much.
Oh,
Thank you.